All right, so getting into something pretty heavy today. Deep dive right into a real-life nightmare.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we're looking into Melvin Johnson.
Melvin Johnson, okay.
American serial killer. Decatur, Illinois.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s.
Right.
Using his Wikipedia page, kind of the core facts, right?
Sure.
And we've got some newspapers clippings, too, from back then to, really get a feel for it.
Oh, wow. Primary sources. That's always good. Gives you that on-the-ground perspective, doesn't it? The fear, the confusion, how things unfolded.
Yeah, you really feel it. The tension just radiating off the page.
Yeah.
So Johnson, born 58, first conviction 78. And this is disturbing. Sexual abuse. 10-year-old boy.
Right. See, that kind of early crime, it's it's a red flag, isn't it? It's a sign, often sadly, a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
He was paroled in 82, given another chance. And instead, this horrifying path makes you wonder about the system, right? How we identify, manage those who pose a real threat.
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
John L. Woods comes into the picture here. Johnson's partner.
Okay.
Provided financial and emotional support, the sources say. Tragic turn later, though. But before that, the crime that really shook Decatur.
Right. The Halloween murders, 84. This is where it gets really bad. 2 young girls, cousins. Sherry Gordon, 12. Teresa Hall, 10. Trick-or-treating, Halloween night. Should be, fun, innocent instead.
Right. Yeah, the newspaper clippings, they really capture it, the raw emotion, the fear, the community was paralyzed. Can you imagine the parents?
Yeah, the horror.
Yeah, just awful.
And it went unsolved for years, just amplified that dread, right? The grief, not knowing, unimaginable. They were buried in Greenwood Cemetery. But the mystery, it lingered like a ghost.
Heartbreaking. And then just a few months later, 85, another tragedy. Sandra Hobson.
25 years old. Found murdered in her apartment. And the worst part, her 5-year-old son, Arcadio, he found her.
Oh, gosh.
It's almost too much to think about, that trauma, a child witnessing that, the long-term impact.
God, I can't even imagine. The brutality, sexually assaulted, smothered, stabbed multiple times. Police arrested 2 relatives, Bruce A. Casey, Irma T. Britton. And a lot of it based on, Arcadia's testimony.
See, that's something to consider, isn't it? That reliance on a 5-year-old in a murder investigation, the potential for error, misinterpretation, it casts a shadow.
Makes you wonder about justice, right?
Yeah.
Britton was released, Casey acquitted, case went cold, unsolved for years. And remember Woods, Johnson's partner?
Right.
This is where things take a turn.
88, Woods is murdered, stabbed to death, in his apartment, staged to look like a burglary.
Right.
But a chilling detail, anonymous phone call to the police about the murder, traced back to, you guessed it, Johnson.
Feels right.
And he had stolen items from Wood's apartment and a knife matching the murder weapon. Seems like a lot of evidence.
It does.
But not enough. At the time, he walked free. A pattern we see throughout his history. What allowed him to evade justice for so long? What were the factors? Systemic, societal.
We need to explore that because it is done in there. The crimes, the shadow over Decatur, they continued. How many other lives impacted? Had it not been for, a breakthrough. Years later, DNA.
Right. Technology plays a key role here. He died in 03, stomach cancer, AIDS, in prison, Texas, unrelated charges. But his DNA, CODIS, the national database. And this is where things start to unravel.
2009, a match. The Halloween murders. Sherry Gordon.
Yeah.
Teresa Hall. Finally, after all those years, some closure for those families.
But it's not over. Just 7 months later, another hit, Sandra Hobson, John L. Woods.
It's like his past, catching up. From beyond the grave, Decatur PD officially declared him a serial killer. But it still isn't over, is it? There are lingering questions, the possibility of more victims.
Right. Suspicions about a Philippine University student, another possible killing. Indiana. It just adds another layer, doesn't it, to the tragedy. And it shows the importance of continuing to investigate, using these new techniques, DNA, to maybe bring closure to families still waiting for answers.
So we've got some of the pieces of Melvin Johnson's life. Crimes, the fear, the delayed justice, the technology, bringing the truth to light. But what does it mean? What can we learn from this dark chapter? Let's think about that, the implications of all this. It's unsettling, right? To think he went undetected for so long. Makes you wonder how many other cases out there waiting for that DNA match. What does this say about, the limitations back then in the 80s, before DNA?
Chilling thought.
Speaks volumes.
About how far we've come. Forensics, early 80s, DNA analysis, it was just starting.
Right.
They relied on eyewitnesses, like we saw, Arcadio, and well, that can be unreliable, especially with a child. So yeah, those limitations probably played a role in Johnson evading capture for so long.
You mentioned those other possible victims, the Millikan University student and the case in Indiana. Any hope of finding answers after all this time?
Hope, powerful thing. Concrete evidence might be scarce after so long, but they deserve to be explored.
Right.
Those connections. It's not just closing cases. It's justice for any victims and peace for their families still searching for answers, acknowledging their pain, honoring their memory.
Thinking about technology, it's hard not to imagine how different things might have been. If CODIS, the DNA database, had been around back then, could some of this have been prevented?
It haunts a lot of cold cases, doesn't it? The what ifs, agonizing. But it highlights the advancements in forensic science, the role of technology in criminal justice.
Bittersweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
These incredible tools. But they can't undo the past. For the families, though, the DNA matches, closure, but also, I imagine, reopening old wounds.
Right.
Bringing back all those painful emotions.
Oh, absolutely. Closure, it doesn't erase the pain, the trauma. It's about finding a way to live with the loss, to honor the memory. Imagine that mix of emotions, relief, anger, that it took so long, and just profound sadness that nothing can bring them back.
Especially those two young girls, Sherry Gordon, Teresa Hall. Their families waited, over 2 decades for answers. It's hard to fathom that wait of not knowing.
And Arcadio, Hobson's son, a child discovering his mother's body, that moment, it leaves a mark.
Right.
And then to learn years later, the man responsible, someone he knew, someone who had been in their lives, it's a horrifying betrayal.
It makes you think about the ripple effect of violent crime. It goes beyond the immediate victims, doesn't it? Families, communities, scars, that can last generations.
It really does. It shows the importance of supporting victims' families, creating a society that prioritizes healing, restorative justice, examining the systemic issues that contribute to these tragedies, and working towards solutions, preventing future harm.
Let's shift gears a bit. Talk about Johnson himself. The sources, they paint a picture in and out of prison, much of his adult life, theft, robbery, and of course that disturbing sexual abuse case. 78. What does this tell us about the man behind these crimes?
A pattern we see often. Early signs. Criminal behavior, often acts of violence, directed at vulnerable individuals. It often precedes more serious offenses, underscores the need for early intervention, understanding the factors that contribute to criminal behavior.
And then there's that relationship with John L. Woods. It's a jarring contrast.
Yeah.
Woods supporting him, helping him through those prison stints. And then Johnson taking his life. Grim reminder that darkness can lurk beneath the surface.
It's true. Serial killers, they often blend in, charming, charismatic, build relationships, gain trust, concealing their true nature. This case, it highlights the importance of awareness, recognizing red flags in our own relationships, interactions.
This whole deep dive, it's been emotionally heavy. You're right. It's difficult to process. The brutality, the long road to justice, the impact on the victims, their families. Where do we even begin to unpack all this?
I think one of the most important things is to remember the pursuit of justice. It's ongoing. It's about acknowledging the past, learning from mistakes, improving our systems to prevent future tragedies, and remembering the victims, their stories, the lives they lived. They deserve to be more than just statistics.
So we've been exploring this dark path, Melvin Johnson, a man whose actions, well, they left a trail of pain and loss across Decatur, Illinois. It's heavy stuff. And you might be wondering, like, where do we go from here? How do we reconcile this, the horrors, with hope for a safer, more just future?
It is a crucial question. We can't erase what happened, but we can learn. Johnson's case, decades towards justice. It highlights perseverance, the need to always improve our criminal justice system.
You mentioned DNA technology, a game changer. But beyond that, what steps can we take to prevent these tragedies, support those affected by violent crime?
We talked about supporting organizations, working these cold cases, donations, volunteers, vital work, but there's also awareness.
Right.
How much do you know about the resources available to victims in your community, support groups, counseling, legal aid? Just spreading the word can make a difference.
Empowering people to take action.
Right.
We often feel
Mhm.
so powerless
Yeah.
in the face of these horrific events, but even small acts contribute to positive change.
Exactly. And think about this. What if Johnson hadn't died in prison, lived long enough to stand trial? Would he have confessed? Would the families have had the chance to confront him in court?
Chilling thought. Raises some big questions. Justice, closure, would that have offered more resolution than the DNA matches years later? Or would it just reopen wounds, prolong the pain?
No easy answers. Each family would experience it differently. Some might find solace, a trial, seeing him held accountable. Others might prefer to move forward, find closure in their own way.
It's so personal. Grief, healing, no one size fits all.
Exactly, and that's why it's crucial. Sensitivity, empathy. Johnson's story, it's a reminder of the darkness out there. But it shows us strength, resilience, the human spirit.
Wrapping up this deep dive, I feel sadness and hope. Sadness for the lives lost, the pain, but hope for a future where we learn from this and strive for a more just, compassionate world.
And maybe that's the most important thing to take away. Never forget the victims, their families, the ripple effects, but let these stories fuel us to create a better future where these horrors are less likely to happen.
A future where justice isn't just the end, but the journey we take together. This deep dive into Melvin Johnson, harrowing, necessary, exploring the darkness and the human heart. But remember, even in the darkness, there's hope. Always the possibility of change, the power of the human spirit to seek justice, strive for better. Thanks for joining us.